Hi everyone. Today I want to chat about Demeter and Persephone. Now the story is pretty fascinating, and it pulled me so hard, and I've come to like an epiphany as to why. As with most myths, I'll say, there seems to be like an underlying moral. You pull different aspects of the story out. It's like the purpose of myth making, right? It's the purpose of storytelling. And when I think of the story, like the specific story of Demeter and Persephone themselves, and I kind of decided to do this now instead of in September, like that's like Demeter's time, when the grain's coming out, right? But I decided to do it now as like a nod to Mother's Day, which is next weekend. But I thought about the story, okay, and I'm going to go over like the nutshell version. Basically, Demeter is the goddess of the grain, and she has a daughter with Zeus, Persephone, or Cora, as they call her. The maiden name for her is Cora. And the way I understand the story, because all versions are pretty much like, there's little differences in all the versions, but Persephone and Demeter were out picking flowers, right? Or picking grain or whatever. And Persephone sees, being the innocent, right? And I can imagine this so hard. But she sees this, either a narcissus plant or a poppy. And in every version, it's either one of those two. Both could go with the story. Because I feel like narcissus plant is all about beauty, like recognizing your own beauty, and then how that can, like Narcissus, he stares at his reflection because of his beauty. So it can kind of go on her recognizing her own beauty. That's why she went after that flower. And then if it's a poppy, then that can be on, like, you know how there's like a sleep induction. So it's almost like she dreams this whole thing up, but in the dream she becomes the queen of the underworld and awakens into her own power because she starts recognizing her own power. So both flowers essentially work in terms of symbolism. But she goes to pick this flower, whichever one, and a big chasm, opens up in the earth, and here comes Hades on his chariot, pulled with black steeds, and he scoops her up and takes her to the underworld. And her cries are like bouncing off rock and like chasm and water, and here Demeter goes, and she like flies out like a bird, it says, to all the realms of the earth to try to find Persephone. And eventually can't find her, and there's a whole other story adaptation, like another story plot that braids off of that into her relationship with Demophone, and that's a whole other thing. But Demeter didn't really like the match of Persephone with Hades, but in terms of like what marriage would have been in ancient Greece, it made sense. Because if you think about it, Zeus is Demeter's uncle. And to keep the bloodlines pure and to keep like the dowry money in the family, then that's how the marriages would have taken place. So it's called patrilocal society, where the father like pretty much arranges a marriage with the brother or an uncle of some kind. And that was the norm, much like what happened to Zeus and Demeter. So for Demeter to not like the match, it could have been the fact that, I love what Joey Morris said. She said something about, she fell in love with the goth boy. Like, yeah. But it could be that particular uncle, because of his role in, being in one of the Olympians over the dead, that it could have been just that Demeter didn't like, that she had this beautiful maiden goddess of spring as a child, and here she is getting locked down into the underworld. That doesn't seem fair, maybe. And so while she's down there, she effectively marries Hades, right? Who, in my opinion, is like one of the most sedate lovers of all that whole pantheon. Like, if I wanted to choose one to be a husband, it would be him. But more on that later. But so they have a life down there, and when Demeter is like bitching and moaning about getting Persephone back and tells Zeus, and the whole land is famished because of her wrath, and it's just winter all the time. Eventually Zeus is like, okay, I gotta do something, right? And sends Hermes down there, and there's so much more to the story than this, but it's just a nutshell. But it got me thinking about, and okay, so let me finish the story. So they come to an agreement. It says he tricked her, but I don't think it was a trick. I think it was more of and not really a manipulation, but more of I know we know what's best for each other. This is a real partnership. If you eat this pomegranate, then that just further helps you figure out who you are, type of an agreement that they had. And so Persephone eats the pomegranate seeds and has to stay down there, right? She can't just leave forever. So they've effectively come up with an agreement that she comes back either 3 or 4 months out of the year. All versions are different again. But, and then that, thus spring, right? That's why we have winter, and that's why when we have spring, that's her coming back to be with the mother, be with Demeter. And I thought about it got me thinking in the role of archetype, what is Demeter? Because she's the mother, right? But because the patrilocal society that would have been ancient Greece, she would have gone to an uncle. She would have gone to Poseidon. She would have gone to Hades. She would have gone to any of the other ones, right? It's like, why did Demeter have such a feeling towards Hades? And not the other ones that weren't any good either. What exactly are you adverse with? What's stopping you here? And I thought maybe this is the archetype. Maybe it's showing the archetype of the devouring mother. Overbearing tends to. It's like the caregiver archetype, way into shadow. And I had an epiphany the other day about why the story has always I was always drawn to the story. And I'm not going to go too in depth about my life story, but my mother is exactly like Demeter. Like, my life story is exactly like this story. For real. And when growing up, I was extremely sheltered and extremely, I don't want to say that my mother was overbearing. She can be, but it was more along the lines of severe. She has always been in my whole entire life a severe caregiver. That's all she is. That's all she knows. She's a housewife / mother, and that's it. That's it. And when she doesn't have that, she tends to get into these severe depressions. Oh, I need to see you. Oh, I need to see you. It's been a week. I need to see you. I need to just come up there. And then, when we all moved out, all of the kids, she just went into this dark space where she didn't know what to do with herself. She had no hobbies. She had no life of her own. No other friends outside family. And so for me and my siblings, that was always something that we have strived for. The things in life that make us happy can't just be our children. Yes, we love our children. Yes, we're mothers. And yes, we're housewives. For me, I ended up the same kind of a role as my mother. But I realized that I didn't want to be the person that doesn't have any hobbies. Like, when I'm an empty nester and when my kids are grown and gone, I don't want to look back or look to the future and see nothing but a phone call to the kids every once in a while, or just always catching up with them, always trying to talk to them every day. And my mother has often said, I want to live on a compound and we all just kind of like live right next to each other. It's like, we can't live our own lives that way. And it's hard to have the dialogue with my mother about this, but it's because she's I'll say, caregiver to the ninth power, which is a fantastic thing. It's a blessing to embody that caregiver archetype, but I've never known her to embody any of the other ones. None. And not that that's, like I said, I'm not talking down to her, and this is a nod to Mother's Day. I love my mother, but I feel like the story of Demeter and Persephone called to me because I had this mother. When it was time for me to fall in love, I ended up falling in love at a very young age. I think I don't know how old we were 14, which is too young. So right at that age, it would have been puppy love. But there was a lot of controversy in my family about the love me and him shared. And anyway, so if y'all knew my life story. But I fell in love really young, and it was hard for her to accept. Not so bad into the Demeter role, but like didn't want to let me go. Now it wasn't really, it was because it was half that she didn't like him, or she didn't think he was right for me or something. But then it was on the other half, it was not wanting to let me go. I actually was the oldest. I'm her oldest, and my youngest sister she's like been a wild Mustang, right? So she's kind of just been flitting about her whole teenagehood and adulthood too. So she was kind of already out, like already moved out and had her own life for years before I did. So I was pretty much like the last one of hers that flew the nest, so to speak. So it was just right, like please don't leave, and even to this day, I'm married, been married forever, have kids now, and it's like, she still has episodes where she's like, well, you need to do this, and you need to do this, and you need to do this. It's like advice. And then it's, well, I can, let me come up and do your dishes for you if you're feeling stressed. Like, those are beautiful things. Those are beautiful things. When my mom comes to visit and she sees a load of laundry sitting there, she'll just fold it, right? But it's because of her caregiver embodying that still to this day, even though she's an empty nester, she can't stop herself. And I feel like me coming into my own power, if you've watched any of my other videos, you know that I started out in like a dogmatic kind of a Christian household. Not really, I won't say it into like a severe extent, but it was mostly like you need to follow God, need to follow Jesus, need to follow the Southern Baptist, and nothing else, right? That was pretty much the stint of it. And I always knew I was different. So within that, I could never come into my power, so to speak. And then when I got married, and I'd been in love with the guy since I was 13 years old, 13, 14, I don't remember now. It seems funny now because it wasn't until we got out on our own that I started awakening. And it probably has nothing to do with him, okay? Nothing. But just the fact that I was able to sever myself from that caregiver and be my own person, so to speak, I bloomed. I bloomed out. I ate the pomegranate seed. And yes, having the partnership of him that totally accepts me 100% in whatever I choose to do, however crazy I am, that right there, it's about coming into your power, right? And I was like, oh my God, I'm living, I'm like probably a descendant. Like, I'm living this line here. And that felt it feels so surreal when I think about it, when I think about that story, and I think about embodying certain archetypes to get what you want, to manifest the life that you want, and how I have no idea how to convince my mother, maybe now that she's an empty nester, she needs to embody another archetype besides the caregiver. I want to believe that we're even if it means being different, and even if it means coming into your power may hurt your feelings or may leave you feeling empty because of the empty nest syndrome, it's perfectly okay. You can accept them without them doing their own laundry. Like, if I choose to not do my laundry, you have to be okay with that, right? So it's like a push and pull between mothers and daughters. And like I said, I have a great relationship with her, but I just saw so many similarities between her and me and Demeter and Persephone. It wasn't even funny. I was like, oh my god. So I just wanted to tip my hat to the caregiver archetypes out there that are loving their kids, even in a smothering way. I want to tip my hat to you because I understand where you're coming from. I understand that embodying that archetype and all you've ever known is taking care of children. I know how hard that life is. But my goal is to be 100. And when my kids are grown and gone and they forget their mama on the other side of the planet, I want to be able to love them, and I want them to love me, and I don't want to be suffocating, and I don't want to be overbearing, and I don't want to call them every week and be like, did you do your laundry in college? Like, no. It's about cutting the cord and being okay with that, and being okay with the fact that the umbilical cord's always going to be there. Always going to be there. The pull, the link is always going to be there. But the love is always going to be there. But the way you think about the link is what matters, and what you do with the link is what matters. So much love to all the mothers out there, much love to all the daughters out there, much love to all the great relationships, all the bad relationships, much love to all of you. This Mother's Day, I'll say, this Mother's Day vlog. And much love to my own mother, because I know that her life wasn't easy, and I know that sometimes embodying a certain archetype, even if it goes too much into shadow, it's about recognizing that and knowing yourself. And I think that that's so important. When we see ourselves going too far into the shadow, we need to pull ourselves back. And I want to shout all that out. I want to shout that specifically out today. So, the books I used to think on this is this beautiful, ultimate encyclopedia of mythology, which is great. It has great pictures. Actually, let's get to some pictures. Great pictures, statues, a whole bunch of stuff. A to Z of classic stories of the gods and goddesses. So, great. Like I said, like this says, only $6. Women Who Run with the Wolves. There's so much in here about mother-daughter relationships, aside Demeter and Persephone, but there are a couple of instances in here where she pulls the Demeter archetype or the Persephone archetype into a specific story and talks about them a couple of times, actually, that I flipped through this for some references as well. And then my all-time favorite mythology book is by Edith Hamilton. It's Hamilton, right? Yeah. Mythology. I love perma-bound books. They're so luscious. It's like hardback that you like, that stays open. It's not too hard to crack the spine. The Quest of the Golden Fleece. I've been studying Medea too, so of course that opened right to that. But this is actually beautifully illustrated as well. I don't know if you can get this anymore. This was actually an old library book. I think I bought this from Thrift Books 10 years ago. Maybe even longer than that. I don't even know if this is in print anymore, but it's Edith Hamilton's Mythology. That's it. And there's all kinds of stories in there. And the way, it's just like prose with her, almost like Women Who Run with the Wolves. So those are the 3 books I used to pull out the mythology story, and then I kind of just wanted to ramble a little bit about mother and daughter relationships a little bit, and mine personally, and how seeing both sides of the coin, having been the daughter and now I'm a mother now, that I felt like talking about it and, pulling from relationships is like pulling from these stories. And there's always going to be a correlation there. That's what storytelling is. Pulling that down to sending that down the line. Ancestor veneration. So, like I said before, much love to all the mothers and daughters out there, and sons. I happen to have sons, so, that's really special for me, is to have sons. So I hope to see all of y'all again. And I hope to talk about some more mythology stories in the future. So much love.